Today we're going to be talking about why you crave freedom even when you're already successful, you already have the money, right? Maybe you went very external for a while, you just wanted to build a business, you wanted to become free, but you still feel trapped. And we're going to talk about why that is, right? We're going to talk about freedom inside and versus outside. And we'll talk about something in either of introjects, and then we'll go into a little bit of a case study um, and talk about what that actually looks like on a practical level. Okay. Now, if we break these down one by one, so freedom outside versus inside, both are important actually. For example, if you're watching this video and you're really under 10, 20K per month, especially if you're living in the West, then the external is really, really important, right? And even if you're at that number, you can still go higher, right? There's no problem for that. But what it means is the external is important here. However, when you're there and you're still feeling trapped, you're still feeling like you're constrained, like you're not really there yet. Well, usually I've noticed with many, many clients that you don't actually ever really get the feeling of getting there, right? The more money doesn't create more freedom at this point. Okay, that's where we want to include the inside too, right? And that's very important because if we don't include the inside, we're just going to be running around trying to make the external work again and again and again, and we're going to be getting nowhere. Now, what this has to do is with this idea of introjects. So we've got our introjects here, and essentially introjects is we have an internal map, an unconscious map of our reality, right? This is how we navigate the world. You've maybe heard of something called RAS, reticular activation system. All it means is we are interpreting the world through our mind because there's so much out here that it would be literally impossible to take it all in and to take it all in a useful, accurate way. So we have a map for understanding the world, for being in the world. Now, sometimes we take on unhelpful maps. We take on routes that aren't actually leading us to where we want to be. And we kind of call these introjects, right? The reason I say we kind of call them is technically everything we're receiving and we're taking on is an introject, but we often use introjects as more of a negative shadow construct that we've taken on. And that could mean if I've taken on some idea that I'm trapped, right? We've taken on some idea that I'm not good enough, that I'm this, that I'm that. That's going to be a pretty negative map to live in, and it's going to lead to a lot more suffering and generate a lot of anxiety and resistance and just suffering overall. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's see what this actually looks like on a real level. So we've got a little example here. Let's make this yellow. So example A, and this client is at the stage we spoke about, 20K per month. And what he was experiencing was a lot of this resistance, procrastination, feeling trapped. And you may have experienced that too, but it's very, very tough, especially when you're at the level where it's no longer that fear really fueling you, right? It's no longer that I need to get out of bed because otherwise I'm going to starve fueling you, and you're kind of good. That's often when the resistance and the procrastination, the feeling trapped fits in, because you're actually good now. And it can be very difficult at this stage to move forward because you're feeling trapped, you're feeling resistance, you're feeling procrastination. However, we explored this, right? Because really, all resistance and procrastination are, right? They're symptoms. I'm going to try and write this down on my laptop, iPad. And symptoms do not matter, essentially. When it comes to healing, they don't matter. It's if you're working physically, it's like you have a rash and you just keep working on the rash. But it's more about what created the rash to begin with. And this is, in this case, it was an introject, but this is the internal. Sorry, my writing is awful. I'm trying to do this on a keyboard as well. Right. Internal map. And in this case, the internal map was essentially faulty, right? This person taking an introject from their mum, And when we're talking about introjects, it can be cognitive, but it can also be somatic. It can be something that we feel. And so in this case, it was just a real feeling of this pressure and this constant awareness of his mum, right? And that led to this real sense of being trapped and trying to escape. She was kind of overbearing and overwhelming. That was his experience. And so what that did in the current day was create resistance and create procrastination and can create a feeling of being trapped. Because what had happened is that initial feeling of being trapped was seen as, oh, I can escape this by doing more externally. But then the mind starts to see, oh, actually, I'm getting there externally, but I'm not escaping this. So it creates all this resistance and procrastination because it doesn't feel like it's going to work anymore. Yet the real problem is the feeling of being trapped, right? And that came from this faulty map from the introject from mum, which we can see here, right? That feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of, I have to do what she says. She is someone that I need to escape from, right? And so what we did was we went through a little symbolic release. It doesn't matter how we do this. It just matters the underlying framework that we do it from, which is we don't want to be working with the symptoms. We want to be working with the internal map. And so when we release that introject from the internal map, what emerged, and we didn't put this in, we didn't place it in. We want to see what emerges organically, what emerges naturally. And it was power and freedom. And when that power and freedom emerges, it's so beautiful. So much richness, so much life, so much real aliveness that came through for him. And we stayed with it at this place for a little bit, just being with that power and that freedom, being with the lightness and aliveness that emerged from not having that pressure from mum, from not taking on and carrying that overwhelm, just being free. And as we did that, we allowed it to grow up into from the internal map, right? The new internal map is one of power and freedom, right? Power, freedom, and aliveness. And what that does is now that that's the new internal map, instead of generating resistance, procrastination, feeling trapped, what do we generate? We generate more aliveness, more energy. We generate more motivation, more inspiration, more creativity. And this is what happened to this person. They started to be really excited with the same business, right? The same business they were doing before. They didn't have to pivot, they didn't have to change, right? Because the problem wasn't the business, the problem was this internal map. And so when we changed that, energy, creativity, enjoyment, joy, aliveness emerged naturally through the work that they were already doing, right? We can also see it as the unconscious map. It doesn't really matter, internal, unconscious. And when he did that, his life just dramatically improved in every single way, right? Work became something that was a joy to do, right? Instead of being something that he hated, instead of being something that he had to grind through the resistance, grind through the procrastination, feeling trapped. And what emerges, right? You're going to see some awful drawing here, but bear with me. Is we often go flat, right? So we start off really rocky, and then we go flat. And what that means, right, is when we're building from chaos, which is what we've got here, this is like chaos. And maybe I'm going to write chaos. Chaos. See, my writing is awful, so please do not judge me on this. we've got the chaos, and then we go flat, right? What does that mean? So at the start, it's just, I'm in so much resistance, so much suffering. I just need to really escape. And then we remove that, and it goes flat a little bit, where we feel really good, we feel really peaceful just as we are. But what this is doing is it's really generating really beautiful foundations, really wonderful foundations. And what that does, we can now start to build from here. And this is where we generate a lot of purpose, right? This is where we create really beautiful things unlike this drawing. And this is the really, it happens all the time, especially with entrepreneurs, right? This happens all the time with my clients. And people way beyond just people that I work with. It's just a common theme and a common pattern that you have that chaos, it flattens out, right? There's actually developmental stages that show this. And from that freedom, from that peace, from that real security, we can build. That's where purpose emerges from, real purpose, right? Real creativity. It doesn't emerge from chaos. It doesn't emerge from, I need to become X, Y, and Z. I need to be this perfect person. This is where real purpose comes from. This is when, this person, he started getting these real wonderful ideas, you know, from that flatness, from that security, from that power and freedom and aliveness, real purpose emerged. And he started to be way more creative. He started to work with his teams in completely different ways that was much more aligned with who he was and ended up being much more effective. And he really started all his language changed into fulfillment and purpose. And that led to revenue genuinely going up. But it was from a desire of fulfillment and purpose, not trying to escape feeling trapped or needing to get to the next revenue. That's fine, you can do that, that's great. But it was less of a need and it just came with the territory, it just happened, right? And so this is really what we're doing here, is when we change that unconscious map, we change what we generate. Instead of generating being trapped, procrastination, resistance, we generate freedom, power, peace, right? We generate then fulfillment and purpose because the new map, right? You may have had the old map for years and years and years. So the new map, that evolves, that grows with you. And at the start, it's like, a little baby deer kind of just finding its feet, falling over a little bit. But then it grows and it grows and it grows until it's so strong, until it's the dominant map in your consciousness, right? And it really, you're able to live from that power, that freedom, that aliveness, and the feeling of being trapped just doesn't arise again.